Hey. So, I thought we would talk about everybody's favorite topic, microservices. Well, it used to be the hot thing, and I suppose that in a way you could still say that it is, because some people are still trying to figure out, what are microservices and sorry about that. Anywho, so people are still in some aspect talking about microservices. I get the sensation that the hype is it's kind of dimming down now, but it was like the only, like a year ago, it was the only thing on everybody's lips. They were only talking about microservices. Everybody was talking about them. And a lot of people are still trying to figure out how they work, what they are, and like definitions and all. And then they have people who say, oh, it's just the old-time soap with a new flashy name. And here is my little rant about what they are, my experiences working with them, what's good about them, what's bad about them. Okay, so first and foremost, let's define what a microservice is. So a microservice, the idea is that you have a service of some sort or a function or something that is running in a container or in some environment somewhere, and it will provide a API endpoint for a communication protocol such as HTTP, which is the common thing, right? So the idea is that if you have an ecosystem of all these tiny boxes which do something, you can, instead of having a single giant application, you can have all these small applications that do all this good stuff. And the idea is that, that's very scalable, and you can basically well, the idea is that if you have all these tiny pieces, it becomes very easy for a single team to manage them, and it becomes easier to reason about. That's the idea. And what, in essence, the difference between this is and having a single big code base is that you have, in theory, an easier time to, avoid spaghetti code and all that good stuff. That's the idea anyway. Now, the problem comes when you don't really know how to create an architecture around this, because some people will, in my opinion, misunderstand where the boundaries of responsibility lie. And this is a common problem in even the monolith, so that, it's very easy to create a microservice or a class called, say, payment or order. That's easy. The problem comes when you have things like logging or validation or anything else that doesn't really fit mentally nice into your domain module, because these things are what we call cross-cutting concerns. These are things that everybody has in common in your domain model, which is why I argue, by the way, that the domain-driven design mentality is flawed at the very start. It's a flawed way of thinking. Anyway, the people who are doing microservices who get it wrong are usually creating microservices that, they have single small functions that do something, and they have no limit for how, because let's imagine that you have a microservice that needs to talk to another microservice, and then that microservice needs to talk to a third microservice, and that microservice needs to talk to two other it can just cascade. And what I usually say is that what microservices does in essence is that you're moving your spaghetti code or your complexity from the monolith, like from the code level, to the infrastructure. That's what some people are doing. That's what's happening. And the best, from what I did something very not this exact thing, but the best tip I ever got about how to think about microservices and getting them right was what I did. I took that, it was a tech talk done by, I can't remember his name now, but he works at Heroku. And in essence, what he said was that the people from their experience on Heroku who have seen microservices work, then what they're basically doing is a pub subsystem. So you have a queue like RabbitMQ or Kafka or ActiveMQ, And your microservices are all scoped to the domain level. So you have a service for payments, you have one for orders, you have one for maybe users and for products. And they are not talking, like they're not like communicating to all these other services. What they're doing is that they are all connected to the queue. So it's basically Redux or the Flux pattern in React land or JavaScript land. So all of them are talking to this single message pipeline, and they simply subscribe to different topics. That's what they're saying. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because that's a really scalable, in my opinion, nice way to do it. And it worked very nicely for me. Now, let's move on to when do you use microservices? Because this is a big one. I did the biggest, I made the mistake is just massive, which proves you can learn 100 things and you still don't know a million other things. And this is a classic example of this thing. I'd like to believe that I burnt my fingers enough to know how to fairly well what to do and what not to do in JavaScript land. But when it came to architecture and managing a company, I have so much more to learn. That's why I'm trying to, during my little job hunt here, of course I'm looking for a job, but I'm also talking to companies where I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I won't want a job there. I'm still talking to them because I need to get better at this. I need to understand how the IT business works as well. I'm not a corporate guy. I will never be a business guy, I think, but it's I don't want to make these mistakes anymore. And in essence, my colleagues set me straight. So I have my own startup, as I probably mentioned, and it's gone pretty well, but I've been through two completely bad iterations of the product, and now we are fairly stable, and the infrastructure is very nice, which is based on Firebase and Swift in essence. However, before that, I did microservices in Node, of course, for the server side. And what I found was that the microservices made it very easy for me absolutely to create these engineering-wise very mentally elegant solutions to this problem. But it is massively time-consuming. It took so much time to make all these services, and then you have the overhead of knowledge overhead, because all of a sudden I couldn't just get things up and running in a single node server. I had to learn the queue system. I had to think about validation strategies. I had to think about Docker, of course. Docker is great, but it starts to kind of snowball on you. It's the same thing in JavaScript land. If you want to be a front-end developer today and you think you're just going to learn JavaScript, don't forget about it. You need to learn so many things to even get started as a front-end developer. And this is the case as well, which is not what you want when you're a small company. You want to be able to focus on getting things done quickly so that you can see if you're going to make money from this thing, right? So what I learned is that microservices is really bad at small scale. Don't even think about it. Just if you're a single developer, a team of 3 developers, don't even do them. Just focus on doing the monolith. Preferably try serverless. It's been working very well for me. You don't have to do that, but I have some good experiences with that so far. And the time I think microservices starts to make sense is if you're a really big company and you have a lot of different systems that all of a sudden you find that 3 or 4 of your different products need some common APIs. When you see, when you have these data silos or data services that are all doing different things, and the ecosystem is very, very large, then I start thinking, yeah, probably microservices is the way to go there. And I would be really keen to see if somebody's made it work. I've seen a few of the tech talks that Netflix provides about their infrastructure, and you look at them, they're visually representing it very nicely, and it looks very magnificent. But then there's the other aspect of it. Imagine how complex it must be to maintain such a large system of microservices. And I watched a really nice tech talk about people who didn't get it as well as like perfectly done, which is like, I think it was Dell Computers who got it completely wrong, and it screwed up their entire product. So it's a tricky thing. You have to be very careful about using them. But I think that for for really large companies, it's probably the way to go. But once again, don't get into the hype. If you're not like at the scale of Netflix or even Ticketmaster, like we're talking about, do you have a gigantic corporation? If yes, then look into microservices. If no, don't do them. Just don't. If you wanted to see, like, I will give you this tip. And this is probably why I love Elixir, or one of the biggest reasons I love Elixir. If you're trying to use microservices because you're trying to solve the problem that, hey, over time we find that the monolith gets very inflexible and it gets to be spaghetti code, then your problem isn't microservices, your problem is spaghetti code. And Elixir does this probably better than any language I've ever seen. Try it out. Just look at the structure of the applications you build with Elixir, because they are service oriented or process oriented, so that every module, every piece of code that you're writing can in essence be a microservice. Its own running service, and it's all in the same code, which means that you have both. You have microservice architecture with a monolith deployment, which is, I mean, it's just genius. I love it. So look at that and this is my tip to you. This is what I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to figure out how to create good, like at the code level, architecture, not just at the conceptual level, but how do I structure my projects so that my developers and my colleagues, and that we don't get into this spaghetti situation. And it's a tricky problem, but I don't think that microservices is going to solve that one for you.